ask Asmau Benzies Leo. She's tried to begin, talked in elaborate terms about the FGM. But when we look at the numbers, what, in your view, are the most common forms of gender-based violence in Nigeria? Because if we begin from the higher numbers, then the chances are that you are going to, cut down the numbers quite much earlier than you will if you go to the lowest. I'm not sure what the numbers are now, if FGM ranks among the highest, but what are the numbers that you have?
Okay, thank you very much for this very important question. There are lots of types and forms of gender-based violence that occurs both in private and public spaces. When I talk of private spaces, maybe in the domestic sphere, and then maybe on the street or governance, it can happen anywhere and to anyone. Because sometimes when we talk about gender-based violence or sexual and gender-based violence, we always look at it from the bottom to the top. But I tell you that even the wealthiest women suffer gender-based violence. So it's not an exclusive issue that only targets the poorest of the poor. It is a general issue. And gender-based violence is not just targeted at women alone. Because when we talk about violence against women, that is targeted at women. But when we talk about gender-based violence, men and boys suffer gender-based violence, and women and girls equally suffer gender-based violence, depending on the context. So when you talk about forms, there is, let me just summarize it into three categories. We have the structural violence, and structural violence normally is being perpetrated by state authorities against the citizens. Structural violence is institutional. For instance, we have a decay in the health sector. We have decay in the educational sector. We have even issues with food insecurity. So the lack of responsibility on the part of leaders, state actors, to ensure the needs and priorities of citizens are met in itself is violence. So in Nigeria, every Nigerian, permit me to say, is suffering one form of violence or the other perpetrated by state actors. Because when human beings are not given the needed thing, basic, as much as the food, they need shelter and clothing, then that's violence.